If you take a look at this man's left side, then you might notice that his face is looking a bit unusual compared to his right side. At first, you might think that this man has suffered a stroke that has left his face disfigured, because he is already at the ripe old age of 90 in this picture. But the injury of his face comes from his youth and from a knife fight. One night he was drinking with his friends when a man called Katajamäki tried to cut his throat open in drunken haze. His quick reactions saved him from a certain death, and like a skilled pugilist, he laid down his big chin down when the blade tried to reach his neck. Great defense. The knife does not touch the vital jugular, but peels the skin from his face, leaving it hanging from his left side. Katajamäki is soon subdued by other rowdy men, and the night of drinking continues. All is forgiven, and band of outlaws are not going to make a big deal about it. Neither does Juha Huhtamäki, because he is one of them, knife fighter that seeks glory and makes a living with property crimes with his drunken band of outlaws. When Juha is done drinking and returns to home, he pulls out the loose body tissue that hangs from his face and burns it in the fireplace. Then he takes a sip of water and goes to sleep. In his social circles, it was very unmasculine to complain about small injuries like these. It is amazing that he lived to this age. He was a member of a specific kind subculture of knife fighters, outlaws in Finland, that were called puukkojunkkari. Puukko means Finnish knife that has single curved cutting edge, and junkkari was a German word for a junker that referred to noble-born officers in the Russian Empire during this era. But nobody who belonged to this subculture of violence and honor was a noble-born. These knife fighters were mostly men of lower caste. Their leaders were wealthy peasants at best, but a large part of their members were rent farmers and farm workers who didn't own their land, and they came from a very specific region of Finland called Southern Österbottnia. It had a very specific environment to make it a hotspot for violent homicide starting from the early 18th century. Southern Österbottnia had an economic gold rush in the 17th century, when ships of the Europe required huge amounts of tar to keep the wood and ropes from decaying during the long voyages. Most of this tar came from eastern part of Swedish kingdom that is known as Finland, and especially the region of Österbottnia provided to be a perfect environment for tar production. Vast amounts of forests were cleared in the Providence and burned in tar pits. This provided immense wealth to the local population because forests were owned by the village themselves. This old style of ownership of forests and land comes from old clan culture that won't be a topic of this video. But everyone got their share from this black gold. The cleared land also proved to be a fertile farmland, so it was a win-win to the local population. But alas, it is exactly this economic boom that creates weird instability and inequality to the community. When the French Revolution broke out, the Swedish nobles are nervous like every blue-blooded aristocrat in Europe. They decide to loosen the feudal society and give property rights to the peasants. Now even peasants have ownership of their houses, and the public land is being split between the houses. In southern Österbottnia, the forests are turning into a more scarce resources, and soon there are clear winners and losers inside the peasant caste with this revolution of property ownership. But still, everyone is getting wealthier and are better off than the rest of Finland. There is less problems with rent farmers in Österbottnia because there are no huge mansions like in the rest of Finland, so even land farmers are getting houses with land for themselves. But like we all know, money can cure problems with the human soul. Even though the rest of the Finland is poorer than Österbottnia, common people are more equal with each other in poorer regions. They can't change their situation with their own work that much, but in Österbottnia there's wealth and success everywhere. If one strives for it, it was at least very possible when there were more forests for tar production. But the forests are going away. In Österbottnia society, one must show his success, and there's a boastful culture of wealth. It is handsome to be a fat and have a second floor to the big house, even though that serves no purpose. the surplus population of men that can't reach this wealth that seems to surround them and eat meager diets that leave them short, they turn into other activities where they can reach for glory. They showcase their courage in deadly pugilism for fame and glory. This is done with a stiff drink, of course. Slowly, this knife-fighting culture starts from the coast of Österbottnia that has been stripped from the forest in the early 18th century and moves slowly to the southern part of Österbottnia. They don't accept their fate as a small man and want to make themselves a stuff of legends. They have actually a very romantic goal in life, to be turned into a folk song, a tale that would be told all over in Finland, and some of them did succeed in this. So let me work as their poet singer and breathe life to these outlaws. We are going to a county where the most famous gang of night fighters resided, Härmä. They were known as Härmän häijyt. It doesn't rhyme in English, but that means the wicked of Härmä. It is late autumn Sunday. A funeral party dressed in black is returning from the graveyard to the house of Mäenpää. They have just buried the old farmer Mäenpää and will continue the memorial service at the farm. The funeral party is being led from the first cart where the old widow of Mäenpää sits. The first cart is driven by the farm worker Bergman. Right behind the first cart is a peasant called Kustaa Vakkuri with his wife. Suddenly, a small blonde-haired man with dark restless eyes runs to the road to the first cart and hits the driver Bergman with a pistol handle. Bergman is stunned, but does not lose consciousness from the blow and manages to break free from the assailant by speeding up. The small weasel-looking man lets the first cart go and moves his attention to the next cart driven by Kustaa Vakkuri. Kustaa has time to react and evades the coming strike of a pistol. When the small assailant misses, he pulls out his knife before the knife edge reaches Vakkuri. He has managed to wrap his small horsewhip around his fist and gives a good punch to the side of the head. The small man falls to the side of the road in daze. Funeral party is shocked from the incident, but continues to the Mäenpää house for the memorial service. 1 hour later, there's another incident. Two men arrive to the house of Mäenpää. One of them is 25-year-old farm worker Uusihauta, and he is carrying an axe. The second man is the small man that attacked the funeral party earlier, 23-year-old farm worker called Kiipeli. He is carrying a carpenter's axe. They are both shouting out curses. Some members run away, others hide, but some stay to watch. Everyone turns their head to Vakkuri. These men have been embarrassed by him, and now he must pay with his life. At first, it looks like that Vakkuri runs to seek shelter from the tool shed, but instead, he comes to the yard armed with a digging bar. This heavy and long iron bar keeps the attackers away who can't reach Vakkuri with their axes. Uusihauta throws away his axe and takes out his puukko. He moves behind his opponent, who is concentrating to Kiipeli, that is increasing his attack activity. Just when Uusihauta is about to approach with his knife, Vakkuri manages to swing the heavy digging bar's point to the Uusihauta's unprotected side. It is a perfect hit, and it ends the fight. Kiipeli decides to back down, and Uusihauta joins with him by holding his side. Kiipeli curses and swears revenge, but Uusihauta is badly injured and bleeding from his ribs. The situation seems to be over, but everyone who witnessed the situation know that those words of revenge mean something, because they know who Kiipeli is. He is an unimpressive man in normal social hierarchy, but he is known as a criminal that has been convicted from stabbing a fellow man. He has been sentenced for public intoxication, which is not a normal procedure. The court probably tried to tie him down to some more serious crime, but they only managed to give him a small fine for being drunk. He was known to be a loudmouth, and he compensated his small stature by being especially aggressive. During this Sunday, he had been drinking in the morning with a man known as Ekoluoma, who was quite high in the vicious knife-fighting hierarchy. Apparently, Kiipeli felt insecure during the boastful stories and wanted to improve his own fame. He got the opportunity for that when he spotted the funeral party on the roadside after returning from Ekoluoma. If he could make this crowd run away in terror by himself, it would increase his fame. There was little regard for the religious institution from the vicious night fighters. He was not going to kill anyone at this point. He needs an audience who to showcase his power. This is going to be a common theme in the knife fighting culture of the vicious. They do these acts of violence in large gatherings because that is how you increase your fame. They look for glory at all cost. There is also another important ritual that these night fighters do before their brutal show. They drink and boast with each other. They agitate themselves to the berserker state with alcohol and macho talk before doing their dramatic knife terror in the large gatherings. A month earlier, before this incident, Kiipeli had stabbed another man to the shoulders in a village dance event, and he was going to deal with it in a coming court case. This stabbing to the back, shoulders, and head is also a common knife fighter theme that you will notice. Back, shoulders, and head are not a killing point. You can maim, scar, or wound a fellow man by striking your knife in these areas. If you kill someone while knife fighting by striking to the neck, chest, or stomach, then you are considered an unskilled knife fighter. The point was not to kill always, but to terrorize and seek glory. If you killed another man during a knife fight, then you could face a penalty of death. But at this point of events, Kiipeli had been shamed by Vakkuri twice. This was now a blood feud. Vakkuri was supposed to run away, not to fight back, not to be a hero. The remaining funeral party comes to conclusion that there will be a third attack, and it will either come to his house or to the house of Mäenpää. It is decided that Vakkuri stays where he is, and his neighbor Niemi will travel to Vakkuri house. Apparently, Niemi was a good friend of Vakkuri because no one else dared to join him, or he was worried about his house that was right next to the Vakkuri house. Kiipeli and Uusihauta are indeed going to Vakkuri's house, probably to damage the property, but Uusihauta has bled quite a bit. Just when they get to the yard, Uusihauta lies down in agony. Kiipeli thinks he is dead and runs to the house of Juha Huhtamäki, whose servant Uusihauta is. Huhtamäki was then a 25-year-old peasant who is furious about the death of his servant. Huhtamäki had been drinking the whole Sunday with his friend Isomäki, who also decides to join the revenge party. On the way to Vakkuri's house, they meet another peasant with a carriage, who they force to give them a ride to their destination. Wife of Vakkuri had been scouting in the nearby area and managed to warn Niemi of the coming danger. Niemi and his family run out of their house and look from distance how neighbor's house is being torn apart. The door is broken down and every item inside the house is destroyed. Once there is nothing else left to be done, the three men leave. Then, during the coming cold autumn night, the Vakkuri family has to sleep with blankets that are shredded to pieces. The Sunday is over. The wounded Uusihauta is not fatally wounded, but is bedridden for 3 weeks. There is nothing special in these events, except that no one has attacked a funeral service before. Even though these outlaws have no respect for the church, everyone is afraid of the dead, and especially the ghosts. You don't want to get to the wrong side with the dead. Since the memorial service of the deceased Mäenpää has been disturbed, many people think that he is going to take out his revenge against the vicious knife fighters of Härmä. A couple of weeks after the attack, Vakkuri knows that he is a marked man. He took out small fishes that have connection all the way to the top, and it is only a matter of time when one of them will make an example of him. He decides that attack is the best defense. He takes the incident to the court in the following year, and manages to persuade Niemi and Bergman, who was knocked in the head with a pistol, to join him. The court case was held in the following spring. Most likely he would not have managed to get those two men to follow him into the court if there would have not been a new lawman in the county, 28-year-old Aadolf Hägglund. For almost 3 years he had held the title of nimismies in the municipality of Kauhava, which Härmä was part of. The title nimismies means that he was an official police and prosecutor in the area. To simplify his role, let's call him the sheriff. But keep in mind that he is also a prosecutor, and as you are about to find out, This will be the most hardest part of the job for catching the outlaws. He was not just some random official, but especially handpicked for the job. The whole municipality was recognized in the Finnish Senate as the #1 area for homicide in Finland. Municipality of Kauhava was actually formed to concentrate the most crime-ridden area under one lawman. Previous sheriffs were not impressive, educated gentlemen who could not tackle the knife-fighting culture of puukkojunkkarit. When there was a search for a new sheriff to handle this newly formed hotbed of violent terror, then a young, tall and robust civil servant, Aadolf Hägglund, volunteered for the duty. Although he was only 26 at the time, he was a veteran of Crimean War and held the rank of corporal in the Russian Imperial Army. He was extremely eager to prove himself and quite boastful about his post to his colleagues. He had taken on the British Army. Surely he can take out some lousy criminals with knives. He was, in many aspects, exactly what they were looking for. The first years proved to be unfruitful for the young sheriff. He increases the fines and watchmen in the area and makes more restrictions for knife carrying and public drunkenness. He also wants to start schools in the area, which is actually quite a progressive idea. But these small changes don't seem to be important, since the problem is not the laws being strict enough. The problem is that the laws are not enforced. But in these 2 years, Aadolf learns the name of the game and understands the environment of terror. He must take out the biggest 2 leaders of Härmä's vicious knife-fighting gang. These 2 men are the biggest puukkojunkers in Finland and some sort of spiritual leaders to everyone that follows this violent subculture. They both have the name Antti as their first name. Antti Isotalo and Antti Rannajärvi are legends in their lifetime already. They are friends who basically hold court together for their minions. But their criminal activity is mostly independent and they rarely actually work together in their criminal schemes. When they visit a marketplace or festival, they will walk first with 20 men following them. Nobody starts trouble if they don't want to start trouble. They were called the Kings of Härmä for good reason, and they were big men if you couldn't tell, both over 6 feet tall and easily over 200 pounds. Let's look at them a little bit closer. Antti Isotalo was 35 years old during the start of this story. He was born into a settler family that had lived a strict outsider life compared to nearby village community. Since there was little social contact, he grew to be a shy young man who felt outsider when interacting with more modern village communities in his youth. This experience must have made him look for prestige that he was lacking as unrefined forest boy. Just like many shy Finnish men, he found cure in alcohol. It made him more relaxed and more social. But through his life, he felt uncomfortable to be called a thief or a murderer, and even when he was boastful, accusations like that made him very silent. According to church books, he had moderate knowledge of Christianity. He was never in any point of his lifetime particularly religious. He married into a house called Isotalo. That literally means a big house in Finnish, so it is a perfect surname for him. Some newspaper articles call him a gentleman thief or Arabian bandit that is kind to his house guests, but steals their income as soon as they leave his house and hit the road. He received his first conviction at the age of 24 for maiming and beating a man. In the following year, he received another one from illegal liquor sale. Both crimes were paid with fines. At the age of 27, he is accused of killing a man called Matti Tönkkä, but there was not enough evidence to convict him. Few years later, he received 33 lashes for pickpocketing. There are stories that he also asked to receive his crime partner's lashes because his partner was too small and fragile for the corporal punishment. His latest crime was illegal liquor production. Isotalo was a more honor-driven man in this outlaw subculture. He rarely planned any huge crimes, but mostly did his crime when the opportunity rose. Rannajärvi was always more systematic and cunning criminal mind compared to Isotalo. Antti Rannajärvi was 38 years old at the start of this story. He was born into old and financially stable and large household. It was registered as the #1 house in the tax books. But what you win in fortune, you lose in life. His father was a violent alcoholic who kept household in turmoil, which most likely had a big effect on Rannajärvi. Rannajärvi was a skilled craftsman like most of men in his family, and apparently had a skill in bandaging wounds and would offer to heal people from all walks of life. His criminal record starts earlier at the age of 18 when he received a sentence from fighting and carrying a knife. His next sentence comes when he is newlywed and a fresh father at the age of 23. He barged into a wedding with a gang of men to cause trouble. When jumping to the table full of rage and liquor, he noticed some old enemy and asked his subordinate to stab the man. The blow was supposed to cause injury, not to kill the man, but they were all drunk, so the knife slips into the artery near the neck. After seeing the attack, Antti grabs the man and tries to revive him with the water. While doing this desperate action, Rannajärvi notices that he has mistaken the man's identity, and this dead man is a total stranger to him. The subordinate, who did the attack on the command, received a life sentence in Siberia and was never seen again. Rannajärvi received 5 years of forced labor in Viaborg fortress. You can see how skilled craftsman he was. He built this chest during his jail time. When he returns to home, he finds out that his wife has committed adultery with his farm worker and has given birth to an illegitimate child. He gets a divorce and takes a much younger wife to himself, who is not very good mother for his estranged son. Rannajärvi also has his latest recorded crime, an illegal liquor making. But all these convictions are small and just the tip of the iceberg, and don't tell everything about their criminal past, as you are about to find out. Since we now know the players, Sheriff and the two kings, let me introduce you some details about the Finnish court system, so you understand why criminals rarely got convicted. Courts usually come to the county a couple of times per year, and they would go through a long list of cases that had been raised in the meantime. They were held in some peasant's home. Usually the peasant was a lay judge. The county would choose around 7 lay judges that had the duty to uphold the law and see that the courts were held in proper order, while the professional judge and the scribe would come from the city. Court documents were written in Sweden, and most of the upper class of society of civil servicemen spoke Swedish. The Lutheran Church had a major role in the justice system. They hold the population records and mark all the crimes down for the official crime records. If a person had committed a crime or not done his church duties, like regular confessions, then he could not swear under oath in the court and his testimony was not valid. If someone was not properly giving his or her testimony in the court, they would be sent to have a private confession with the priest so they could tell the truth properly after it. This rarely worked in these cases, since the young knife fighters made mockery out of it. It did work well with older women. Basically, the religion had huge influence of keeping social order. If you did not speak the truth, then God would interfere and punish people from their lies. This social order had started to break down during the 19th century somewhat. People were terrorized by the puukkojunkkarit and could not tell the truth, or they would receive punishment from the gang members. So people were struggling to tell the truth in the court. Most of them didn't remember important details. If the accused didn't confess, then the court would require 2 testimonies under oath that would verify the actions to the details. It is really absurd, as you are about to find out. The testimonies are illogical and plain stupid at some cases, but if there is no 2 testimonies that complement each other and prove the guilt, then there is no case. There were basically no other evidence. It was really hard to convict people, and when people saw these outlaws walk free, then they didn't even want to bother. The new sheriff Aadolf learned this in his first 2 years when he tried to convict Isotalo and Rannajärvi from stealing from local merchant storage. He had solid witnesses before the trial, but when the court date came, nobody wanted to testify and nobody remembered anything. It was embarrassing defeat, but important lesson that you must fight against fear with fear. If Aadolf wants to win, then he must be feared more than the 2 kings of Härmä, who at their stable age didn't need to fight themselves anymore. They were natural-born leaders who could command people to do their dirty work for them. For the first 2 years, Aadolf had his younger brother Felix with him as his deputy, but he moved to be a sheriff to another municipality before this coming trial. Aadolf had another perfect deputy from a 40-year-old Otto Chorin, who was also a veteran and former lieutenant in the army. Big man who didn't spit in his glass and was an aggressive fighter. This stalemate was to be broken with a Cossack baton. Aadolf's and Otto's superior municipal leader Redde knew that the fight is going to be dirty, and there was a good reason men like these were the lawmen in the municipality. The trial of Kiipeli and Uusiauta starts by hearing their versions of the events. In typical puukkojunkkari fashion, they deny everything and tell a bizarre version of the events. The most ridiculous part of it is that they claim to have had only a little bit of beer during the day. Kiipeli does admit that he was carrying a pistol, but specifies that it was unloaded. The Bergman who was riding in the first carriage at the funeral party almost drove over him on the road, and he was merely defending himself. Apparently later they were just returning access to Mäenpää's house. Kiipeli denies seeing who injured Uusiauta, but Uusiauta himself identifies Vakkuri as the man who caused his injury. He demands over 60 Finnish marks from his medical bills. They are obviously trusting that the terror and fear will shut the other witnesses' mouths. At first, it seems like that. Many people don't identify the attacker or didn't witness any of the key moments. But they have crossed the line in their terror, and especially the women who don't have to be afraid of revenge that much from the bandits than other members, tell truthful testimonies. Some of the women had apparently agreed to blame that Uusiauta himself had caused the inch-deep cut to himself. In the first day, there's still no two testimonies that would make the case solid against the bandits. Also, Huhtamäki did not come to the court, so the case will be continued in the autumn again. The leaders of the bandits, Isotalo and Rannajärvi, are nervous about how many people are willing to testify against a member of their own gang. Kiipeli and Uusiauta are absolutely small hooligans who don't work with them in heavy crimes, but it is troublesome that the might of puukkojunkkari does not terrify people enough to keep their mouths shut and eyes closed. They plot a plan to restore the foundations of their straw house of terror and glory. Near the house where the autumn courts are being held, there's a building that works as a tavern and sells beer and liquor. The two big aunties arrive to this tavern with their rowdy gang. Before the sessions start in the nearby house, Isotalo asks one drinker to bring a witness Gabriel Asumaa to speak with him. The courts are about to start, and Gabriel is very worried to meet Isotalo. But he leaves the courtroom because he hasn't had any trouble with him before and does not want to disrespect him. In the makeshift tavern, he is forced to write down a loan of 200 marks for Isotalo. That is a big sum for a peasant. A horse was about 180 marks. Isotalo is not satisfied enough and starts an argument about some small matter. He walks behind Gabriel and stabs him to the shoulders with a knife. Gabriel tries to run to the door, but Isotalo makes it there before him. All the outlaws are getting up and revealing their blades. Gabriel runs through a small window. Fortunately, he does not hurt himself and runs to the house where the court is in session. As Gabriel tells what has happened, Aadolf knows that this is a challenge presented at him. He leaves to a nearby tavern with his deputy Otto, his right man Bergbom, and a layman Juha Pollari. As the four men step inside the tavern, it becomes totally quiet. Aadolf walks to the broken window and asks how they dare to disrupt the court while carrying knives and being intoxicated. Isotalo and Rannajärvi rise from their seats and announce that the tavern is not a courthouse and the sheriff is not invited to the tavern. Isotalo and Rannajärvi circle around the sheriff while the outlaws give them space. Even the three men accompanying the sheriff take distance. The huge men shook their fists and pat their knives on their belts, shouting and cursing at the lone sheriff. Isotalo pushes Aadolf from the shoulders to the broken glass and tells him that he is not good enough man to discipline them. Pale Aadolf watches as Rannajärvi yells straight to his face, "Do I look like I'm drunk?" Their followers laugh at the show. Although being in a tough spot, Aadolf does not run away. He tries to break free from the man and eventually does it, because this is a show-off. The two Antti don't want to use more violence. Although they continue to use their words against the sheriff, Aadolf gets near his party again and tells that the men are not to disrupt the court and must behave properly. Then he walks away with his own men, but does not run. The puukkojunkkarit continue the celebration in the tavern after the sheriff leaves, but their two leaders know that this is not enough. After this incident, the court session continues for a while. Soon the knife fighters arrive to the courthouse, singing and shouting. Chaos erupts and people flee the courthouse. The judge, Theodor Wilander, stops the session. Sheriff Aadolf Hägglund is in a tough spot. He has just been embarrassed and his authority has taken a big hit. What he can do now is to only follow the law and serve the two men who caused this chaos a notice. They would need to be in the court following day, where they would be accused of various crimes of misconduct. Two laymen, Lillström and Alaviitala, are made to deliver the message to the two men. A horrible task, but they apparently managed it without getting themselves killed or maimed. The court resumes just 2 days after the chaos. Everyone is tense from the previous incident. Isotalo and Rannajärvi don't appear to the court to face their charges. It is decided that their case would be dealt in the next winter court, where they would be summoned again. Just when people think the worst is over, in the nearby building, a large ruckus and shouting is being heard to the court. Everyone looks at the sheriff. He orders layman Haapoja to walk to the nearby building and ask for silence. That should be the sheriff's job, but Haapoja goes there and finds the two aunties and their merry gang inside the house. They don't listen to his order, of course, and Haapoja returns to the court. Aadolf decides to take action. It is not coincidence that the gang is here again and that they started their ruckus just in time their case was being handled. This time, a larger and more well-armed group of men walk to the building with Aadolf. Aadolf orders the outlaws to leave. For a moment, two groups of men watch each other in silence. Then Rannajärvi stands up and walks out of the house. He is the most cunning and rational one from the two. All the men follow him in silence, except one. Isotalo remains in his place. Aadolf repeats his order and asks Antti to leave his puukko. He refuses. He knows that this is what the subculture is all about. He can't break the moral code, or he will dismantle the whole organization that is based on personal glory. Aadolf asks the man to follow him, and a wrestling match ensues. Layman Pelkola manages to trip Antti down, and Aadolf gives him his club. Antti receives several blows to his body, but when Pelkola is about to stop, Aadolf tells him to hit him more. A beaten Antti is returned to the carriage, and the conflict is over. For now. It is late in the evening, and the sheriff Aadolf Hägglund is burning the midnight oil. He is worried about the coming court case. Both Isotalo and Antti can pay the misdemeanors with fines, and it won't even make a dent on their property that is swarming with stolen goods. For some, it might look that the tide is on his side, but that is not the case. He needs to get the people to give testimonies against them, and it seems very unlikely. Aadolf has a room in Alaviittala's second floor. It is a small room, and there's a small window that looks directly to the main road. Suddenly, there's a turning point in this war, and two bullets fly through the small window.
Isotalon Antti ja Rannajärvi jutteli kahden kesken. Tapas sinä kauhava ruma fallesmanni, ja minä naisen komiallesken. Tapas sinä kauhava ruma fallesmanni, ja minä naisen komiallesken.